Eyes on the Lines, page 14. I didn't do any of the pages prior to this page because it's all teaching you how to read music and the names of the notes on the keys and so forth. You can do that. If you have any questions, let me know, but otherwise I don't bother with that. There are plenty of YouTube videos that teach you how to do that already. On page 14, they're talking about guideposts. We use guideposts in music a lot. We don't really think about them too much, but we use them. Those clef signs at the beginning of each line, the top line is a treble clef. The bottom line is the bass clef. Well, that treble clef is also known as a G clef because it points out where the G is on the staff. That is the G above middle C. So we have middle C here, the G is here. So that treble clef line, you got that little circle in the clef. The line that goes right in the middle of that circle is the G line. Now the clef itself doesn't move around, it's always there. So you know that the G is the next to the bottom line on that staff, right there. From that guidepost, that one note, you can figure out all the other notes simply by going up or down the alphabet. You have to memorize them eventually, okay? I'm just explaining why they're using a guidepost, how a guidepost works. In the bass clef, that is also known as an F clef. And that is because the line between the two little dots is an F below middle C. So middle C is here, F is here. The clef doesn't move around. Next to the top line on that staff is always an F for a bass clef or an F clef. Now, why so many clefs? Well, because we have a lot of notes and one clef doesn't do it all. But notice on these clefs, the treble clef, that G points out a G. You haven't had intervals yet, you will eventually, but a G is an interval of a fifth above middle C. It's 5 notes up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, on the bass clef, the F clef, the F is an interval of a fifth below middle C. 5. Ain't that handy? There are other clefs. There are C clefs that point out where middle C is, that are used by violas and cellos and sometimes trombones and so forth. We use different kinds of C clefs. Piano doesn't use them. Piano only uses the F clef and the G clef. The treble clef and the bass clef. So Eyes on the Lines are only using those notes. The F, the C, and the G. It's the only notes in this. And if you look at the fingering, it's kind of interesting because all the notes are played with the index fingers. So you're not using it. Now, I have a problem with that. However, I understand what they're trying to do. You know, they're just concentrating on these guidepost lines. My problem is you got to be looking down at the keyboard to do this because your hands are constantly moving around. So I'm going to show you two ways of this. I'm going to show you their way of using the index fingers and how you can get your hands to move around without hesitating, without messing up the music. Music comes first. Then I want to show you the fingering that would normally be used with this and encourage you to do that also. Let's start first with their fingering using index fingers. Okay, you're going to start out with the F here. And then the right hand, if you look at the second measure, the index finger's on C. So when you start the piece, you can start with your hands already in position. Now, after you play the last F in the first measure, here, now look at the second measure. There's a dotted line between the second C and the half note C. There's a dotted line, whichever way you're going, I don't know what you're doing. That indicates the melody is now going over there. All right, so the right hand had the melody at first, the two C's, and now the left hand's going to play the half note C. Since your left hand was down below at the beginning, as you're playing the second measure, those two C's in the right hand, that's when you look down as you're playing them and get your left hand in position to play the third C. In other words, you more or less memorize that second measure. And it's an easy measure to memorize. It's not a hard one. So you can do that. Okay. Now the moment you play that half note C, the right hand's got to go up to the G. And you got to do this so that you're there ready to play when it's time. You don't want to hesitate. You don't want to stop the beat. The beat goes on. It just keeps going. So after you play that, get your hand up on that G where you got to be. Then you're good until the last measure of the first line. The left hand's going to play the first C, and when it does, get the right hand down ready to play the second C. And when you do that, play the second C, move your left hand down over the F, so you're ready to play it when it's time. So you gotta, and you're looking down as you're doing this, so you're gonna look at the music, looking down, and you have to prepare for these things. If you have to memorize that one measure, that's fine, memorize the measure. It's not that hard, it's only a couple of notes. When you do the last line, the second line, it's the same basic idea. The first measure of the second line and the second measure of the second line is the same as the first and second measures of the first line, so it's the same approach. Okay, and then for the third measure, you're moving your hand up, the right hand up to the G, but you do that while you're playing the C. Do that so you're ready to go. Now that next to the last measure is a little trickier because those two C's are played with each hand. You're playing the first C with the left hand, second C with the right hand, so you can play the last measure with the left hand. So there you have to be a little quicker to get the right hand down on that C. You may have to practice, you may have to memorize it. It's not a hard piece, it doesn't have a lot of notes in it. That's the way you got to do it in this case. When I do the play with me, I'm going to do it twice. One with this fingering and one with the fingering I'm about to show you, which I would recommend you also do. And that is the fingering, put your hands in what's known as a middle C position. Now, you got to know where middle C is, I hope. What happens is the two thumbs go on that note. Now, keys aren't wide enough for two fingers to fit on them, at least not my fingers. So it's one thumb or the other, and when one thumb plays, the other thumb gets out of the way. The other fingers go on the other keys. Okay? And that's your position. This way you can play all these notes without moving around. You don't even have to look down at the keyboard. You can concentrate on the music. So the fingering is you're going to use whatever finger's on that note. So that first measure on that F, the little finger in the left hand's going to play it. That's finger 5. Then the thumbs play middle C, whichever hand it shows to play it. And then for the G, the third measure, the little finger in the right hand is going to play it because that's the finger that's on that note. So it's finger 5. Right? And this way you're not moving the hands down, everything's in position, you're there. And I think that's about all I had to say about this one. So let's try the play with me stuff and see what happens. First with the fingers. Here we go. Hands in position at the beginning is the index finger in the left hand's on the F, and the index finger in the right hand's on the C. I'm going real slow. May not be going slow enough for you, but that's all right. Now I'm going to give you 4 counts. I'm going to go 1, 2, ready, go, and then we play. And you play with me. We play together, right? Listen for your notes to make sure they're the same as mine. And also concentrate on the fingering and where the hands are going, and concentrate on everything, you know. All the world problems there are, I don't care. There we go. Left hand's here, right hand's here. I'll give you 4 counts. 1, 2, ready, go. Now let's do the play with me with the hands in both positions. By the way, hopefully you know a quarter note gets 1 count, a half note gets 2, and a whole note gets 4. If you don't, you do now, alright? That's the way they work. I think they explained that earlier in the book. It's important, so know that. So now I'm going to put my hands in the middle C position, which is both thumbs on middle C. Here. Just going to use whichever finger is appropriate for that note. Which means I'm going to start with the little finger of the left hand on that F at the beginning. Alright, I'll give you 4 counts. Let's play this together with this fingering. Alright. 1, 2, ready, go.